Hello everyone, and welcome to this recorded webinar on Erasmus Key Action 1 Youth. This webinar is aimed at all applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralized strand of Key Action 1 known as Mobility for Young People and Youth Workers. We will primarily focus on how to fill out the application form and on providing you with some helpful hints and tips regarding the application process. My name is Ariana, and I'm a project manager working with the Erasmus Plus team, and I will be your presenter today. To give you an overview of what this webinar recording will cover, I will start by giving you a quick introduction to Key Action 1, Mobility for Young People and Youth Workers, looking at the 3 different opportunities available under the Key Action. Afterwards, we will focus mainly on the application form by giving you a first look at what you need to do before applying. Then we will go through the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator and how to validate the form. Afterwards, we will round it up with key points. Lastly, we will look at the next steps and how to contact us if you are in need of support in the run-up to the deadline. Now, before we begin, I would like to reiterate how the EU referendum affects applications under the 2017 call. As Erasmus Plus is a European Union program, we have received questions over recent months about how it is affected by the vote to leave the EU. We therefore understand that it is necessary to keep those interested in the program updated, and particularly those of you who intend to apply for funding in the upcoming call, the 2017 call. So, firstly, the UK is still a member state and fully participating in the Erasmus Plus program. The referendum results does not affect the UK organizations applying for Erasmus Plus funding in 2017 or taking part as the partner or consortium member. Applications that are successful under the 2017 call will be awarded funding for the duration of their entire project. So, Key Action 1 provides opportunities for individuals to improve their skills, enhance their employability, and gain cultural awareness through transnational mobility. Under Key Action 1, organizations can apply for funding to offer structured study, work experience, job shadowing, training, and teaching opportunities to both learners, the young people, and staff, the youth workers. As before, for Key Action 1 Youth, there are 3 deadlines within the call year. These are: Round 1, the deadline will be Thursday, 2nd of February 2017. Round 2, the deadline will be Wednesday, 26th of April 2017. And Round 3, the deadline will be Wednesday, 4th of October 2017. I apologize. Please remember that all applications can be submitted online only. And most importantly, the submission must be made by 11 a.m. UK time, which is equivalent with midday 12 o'clock Brussels time, on the day of the actual deadline. So, just to conclude, for applicants who are aiming to submit an application for the Round 1 deadline, please ensure you're submitting your application by 11 a.m. UK time on the 2nd of February 2017. Now, to give you a basic overview, as you can see on the screen, under Key Action 1 within the youth sector, there are opportunities for young people and youth workers alike. The types of projects that can be supported under this Key Action are mobility projects for young people and youth workers that can comprise of youth exchanges, European Voluntary Service or EVS, and or youth workers activities. In the following slides, we will be looking into these in a bit more detail. We will then start with projects that are focused on mobility for young people. As you can see, there are 2 possibilities: youth exchanges and European Volunteering Service. To look first at youth exchanges, it can be said that these allow groups of young people aged 13 to 30 to meet and live together working on a chosen topic. It is very important to note that the minimum age of 13 must be reached at the start of the activity, and the maximum age of 30 must not be exceeded at the time of the application. The project duration can vary between 3 to 24 months, and the activity's duration can be between 5 and 21 days, and just to note, this is excluding the travel days. The types of activities that can be included are workshop, exercises, debates, role plays, simulations, or outdoor activities, just to name a few. All of these are to be designed and prepared by the young people before the exchange. For this type of project, there needs to be at least 2 participating organizations from different countries within a minimum of 4 participants per national group, and also to add group leaders. The total number of participants must be between 16 and 60 participants in total, plus of course the leaders. Advanced planning visits can be included in these projects. We will discuss about the advanced planning visits at a later stage. Now, to look at European voluntary services, these are the projects that allow young people aged 17 to 30 to take part in unpaid and full-time voluntary service for up to 12 months in another country within or outside the European Union. The project duration can vary between 3 and 24 months, depending on the activity duration. There are 2 types: long-term EVS, which lasts anywhere from 2 to 12 months, and short-term EVS, which can last from 2 weeks to 2 months. These short-term EVS can be done if the project involves young people with fewer opportunities or groups of 10 young people or more. As with the youth exchanges, the minimum age of 17 must be reached at the start of the activity, and the maximum age must not be exceeded at the time of the application. It is worth noting as well that if you are planning on including 17-year-old volunteers, please be aware that there are a number of additional requirements linked to child protection that you will need to address in order to be granted funding. The project approval will be conditional on provision of clearly documented evidence of appropriate risk management and safeguarding measures for said participants. The activity types that can be included are daily work at the organizations in the field of health and social care, environmental conservation, or other type of community projects. The maximum number of volunteers for the entire project is 30 volunteers, and as mentioned before, advanced planning visits can be included, just like you would do with a youth exchange. For all EVS participating organization, an EVS accreditation is required. Applications for accreditation can be submitted at any time throughout the year. However, the submission must be done at least 6 weeks before the Key Action 1 deadline if you intend to apply. Successful beneficiaries registered and manage volunteer via Mobility Tool Plus, and also all volunteers with placements of 2 months or more can receive online linguistic support, or OLS. The requirement for this needed to be specified in the application form. All volunteers using the online tool will undertake a pre-departure language assessment online. Now, as previously mentioned, advanced planning visits can be done for both youth exchange and EVS activities. When discussing about youth exchanges and EVS activities, we mentioned these as being specific to the 2 aforementioned types and must be used only where applications involve young people with fewer opportunities. Their duration must be of maximum 2 days travel, and this is excluding travel days, and the number of participants is generally 1 participant per group. There is, however, a possibility to raise the number to 2 participants per group only if at least 1 participant is a young person who will actually take part in the activity. Regarding mobility of youth workers, we can say that these projects focusing on mobility of youth workers support the professional development of youth workers of any age. Therefore, there will not be any kind of restriction on the age of participants. The project duration can be as well between 3 months and 24 months, just like with the previous ones, activities for the young people. And the activities can last from 2 days to 2 months. These projects include transnational or international seminars, training courses, contact-making events, and study visits, a job shadowing or observation period abroad, in any kind of organization active in the youth field. Now we will take a look at the organization roles when you are doing a Key Action 1 youth project. Mobility projects will involve several organizations which will have to assume some roles and tasks. Therefore, we have three types of roles: a coordinator, a sending organization, and a receiving or hosting organization. Taking them one by one, the coordinator will be the one applying for the whole project on behalf of all of the partners involved. It is therefore sometimes referred to as applicant organizations. Organizations must be based and registered in the UK, and these could be, for example, as public bodies, NGOs, private limited companies, and informal groups of young people aged 13 to 30. Please find additional information on eligible types of organizations and on the definition of informal groups in the Key Action 1 Youth Guide for Applicants in Section 2. Check that you are an eligible organization on page 9. You will be able to find this guide for applicants on our website under Apply for Funding for Key Action 1 Youth Projects. Now, moving forward, the sending organization will be in charge of sending young people or youth workers abroad. This includes also organizing the necessary practical arrangements, pre-departure preparations of participants. And thirdly, you have the receiving organization will be in charge of the hosting the actual activity, developing the program of activities for participants in cooperation with the other participating organizations. Now, both the sending and receiving organizations will be responsible for providing support to the participants throughout the lifetime of the project during all its phases. And as a final note, as mentioned on the bottom of the slide, informal groups cannot participate in EVS projects. All young people and youth workers involved in Key Action 1 can receive a Youth Pass certificate. This certificate describes and validates non-formal and informal learning that has taken place within the project's activities. It can be used as a guide during placements, projects, to encourage learning. Please find more details on their official website, www.youthpass.eu. Now, it is very important to link your Key Action 1 youth project to the overarching European priorities and show the added value of carrying out youth project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objectives of the Erasmus Plus program in mind, as well as the important features of the program. The general objectives of Erasmus Plus are to contribute to a number of policies, which are those you can see on the slide. The objectives are covered in more detail in Part A of the Erasmus Plus program guide, as well as the following important features of the Erasmus Plus program. And these are the Europe 2020 strategy, including the headline Education Target, the Strategic Framework for European Cooperation in Education and Training, ET 2020, the Sustainable Development of Partner Countries in the Field of Higher Education, the Renewed Framework for European Cooperation in the Youth Field, 2010-2018, the objective of developing the European dimension in sport, in particular grassroots sport, in line with the EU Work Plan for Sport, and the promotion of European values in accordance with Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, which include human dignity, freedom, democracy, and equality. The important features of Erasmus Plus are detailed in Part A of the program guide and include recognition of skills and multilingualism. Please look through them carefully in your own time. So, before we take a look at the actual application form, I would like to mention a few very important pre-application steps that you should take. So once you have decided on your Key Action 1 youth project idea, you have found your partners and thought about how to address different European priorities, you will need to ensure that you have obtained a PIC number, which stands for Participating Identification Code. This is a 9-digit participant identification code, which is unique to your organization and will help you complete the application forms. Also, you need to make sure that all the details on your organization are correct on the European Commission's participant portal. If you haven't got a PIC number, you need to complete a 2 registration step, but please double check that your organization definitely doesn't have a PIC number, because we'd recommend you to ask colleagues of your organization in case someone else has already created a PIC. If your organization already has a PIC, you should use that one and do not create a new one, as having 2 or more PICs for the same organization will create problems. If you do need to create a PIC number, these are the 2 steps that you need to follow. First, you will need to register on the EU login. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECAS, and it changed the name during a couple of months ago, but its function is essentially the same. EU login is a point for user authentication to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple, and you can download a guide on our website, which will take you through how to do this. This is in the Before You Apply section, and you will find the link to it on the handout. You will then need to obtain the PIC number through the participant portal. The participant portal is the single entry point for the electronic administration of Erasmus Plus projects, as well as projects funded under other EU programs. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organization as well as upload documents related to your organization. These documents will be needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you've inputted in the portal. If you're creating a PIC, make sure you register onto the correct participant portal. The link provided in the handout and on our website is for the Education, Audiovisual, Culture, Citizenship and Volunteering portal, which is the correct one. However, if you were simply to search on the internet, you might come across the Research Participant portal, which is not the correct portal for Erasmus+. Please be aware that all of your partners will also need to have obtained a PIC number and have uploaded all of the necessary supporting documents on the participant portal before you can submit your application. This is because the details of all of the participating organizations will be pulled into the application form from the participant portal and cannot be completed manually. We'll see how this is done actually in a minute. Finally, for your partners, you will also need to download the partner mandate templates from our website and have them filled in by each partner and signed by both parties. Make sure that all the information, such as the name of the organization, address, and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. Otherwise, the partner mandate will not be accepted. Now, after you have finished with the pre-application steps, you can move forward onto the application form itself. The application form is an electronic PDF form, which we'll call eForm going forward. The eForm will need to be submitted online by the applicant organization by the deadline of 2nd February 2017. And as we mentioned before, please keep in mind that this is 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for application 12 a.m. is referred to Brussels time. The application form is available for you to download from the Apply for Youth Mobility Funding page on the Erasmus Plus website under Key Action 1. I will actually jump now and show you where to find this document, so if you just bear with me 1 second. So when you want to download the PDF form, as in the eForm, you just go on erasmusplus.org.uk, which is our website. You will go to Menu, Apply for Funding, Youth Funding, and Apply for Youth Mobility Funding. On the right-hand side, you should be able to find the application eForms, which you will have to download and save it on your computer. Previously, we mentioned the mandates, which you will be able to find under Key Documents. Here you will have the partner mandate templates. And later on, I will be discussing about some other key documents that you will need to annex to the application form, but this will be once that we actually went through the application form. The guide for applicants that we mentioned will be available under Guidance over here, as you can see it, on the same page. So let's go back to our presentation for a minute. Okay, so here we are. So as I said before, you should save the eForm as a PDF to your computer. You will have to have Adobe Reader installed onto your computer in order to be able to access the eForm. Just to make you aware, some Mac computers are not compatible with the eForm, so we would recommend that where possible to use Windows to complete the application. To make sure you're working on the correct Key Action 1 application form, you should check the areas you can see on this slide. So on the top right-hand corner, the form will state 2017 as the call year and Key Action 105 as the action type, which is youth mobility. So over here you should have it. Then in section B, you will be able to see this in the form as well when we go through it. In section B on the first page, the correct eForm will state that the key action is learning mobility of individuals. Then again, the action type, the call year as 2017, I apologize. The round will be 1 and the submission deadline will be 2nd of February 2017 at noon. Although we said it before, please keep in mind this is the European time, so you will have to be doing it by 11 a.m. on the same day. Now we will jump to the actual application form and run through it with you. For the purpose of this exercise, I will be using a test application form, as we cannot use application from previous rounds due to data protection rules. I will also have some information that I will be inputting so as to show you how to use this eForm. So if you just bear with me 1 second. So here it is. Here is your application eForm. And as I mentioned before, on the right hand side you will be able to see the call year, which is 2017, Key Action 1 learning mobility of individuals, and Key Action 105, which is the action type youth mobility. Now going through the actual form, you can either scroll up and down as I will be doing now with the button, the scroll bar on the side, or if you have a mouse you can just simply use the scroll button from your mouse to go up and down like I will be doing in a minute. Now let's take a look at the application in a bit more detail. I will go through the application form by using the scroll bar, or as I mentioned, the mouse scroll. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section based on our previous application rounds, rather than describing all of the information needed, particularly in areas where the sections and questions are self-explanatory. Please remember that you can find more detailed guidance on each section of the application form in our guide for applicants, which I just showed you a minute ago how to look for it, which you can download from the same webpage where you will find the application eForm. Please remember that it is important that you consult the most up-to-date version of the national agency's guidance, which is available, and these will be the 2017 Guide for Applicants, the 2017 Program Guide for Erasmus+, and most importantly, as we said before, to use the correct application form. Now, let's move down to the first section, which is section B, context. So starting with this section, you will need to select the language you're using to complete the application form from the drop-down menu. For applications made in the UK National Agency, this should always be English, because as you can see, the other sections are already pre-filled. And therefore over here, you would just click from the drop-down button English and just move down to the next section. So further in this section, you will have subsection B1, where you will need to input your start date and choose the duration of your project in months. Once you have done this, the form will automatically fill in the end date for you. The start date must be between 1st of May and 30th of September 2017 for the first deadline. The overall project duration will need to encompass all project-related activities from promotion and recruitment through to evaluation and dissemination. It is important, therefore, to consider realistic project durations to be able to carry out all project activities to a high standard. Please be mindful that you should plan in enough time before your activities to be sure to be able to purchase economical travel tickets. We also recommend that you allow enough time for preparation before starting your project, and in case there are any delays in receiving the contracts or payments. So as mentioned, you can see over here you have project title, acronym, but for the project start dates, either you type it in the format of, for example, let's say we choose 1st of May, so 1st of May 2017. So the format, if you want to type it in, it will always be day, month, and year, but you will have to have a little the dash in between, or you actually go to an actual calendar from which you can choose the date. So let's say that we are leaving the 1st of May, and then the project duration, either you type it in, so for example like that, even actually if you type in the first number it will go in, or you choose from the drop down menu. So let's say we're picking 24 months, and therefore you can see that the form will automatically calculate. So moving down, you have section B2, which you will have to select only UK01 from the drop down menu, like this, as your application will be submitted to us, the UK National Agency. So this is basically the first section B, and then you move forward and you will be going to section C. Now, section C covers details regarding the participating organizations. As you will see, the eForm will initially have two subsections, which is C1, applicant organization, which you can see now. And if we quickly scroll down, don't worry, I will be back at these and I will explain a bit more detail. You will have a C2, which represents partner organization. However, what I would like to mention is that once that you add your first partner, you will have add and remove buttons, which you will see when I will exemplify. And the eForm will create a new subsection, C3, named once again partner organization. This happens for every kind, this process will happen for every kind of partner organizations that you will include. As I said, I will demonstrate shortly, but I will jump quickly back to C1 and discuss a bit about it. So C1 represents applicant organization, and here are some hints and tips for this section. It is important to remember that when you input your and your partner's PIC numbers, the information will automatically populate based on the information provided within the participant portal. So I will be entering a PIC number to demonstrate. Okay, so I've inputted this PIC number for a test application, and I will now show how the eForm will populate the details once the check PIC button is clicked. So here we go. Okay, there were no errors, happy me. So here you will see that certain details have been automatically inputted based on what information you actually included in the participant portal. All other sections, if applicable to you, you will have to upload manually, such as the acronym or, for example, department. Okay. So whenever you input a PIC number, be it your own organizations or your partners' organizations, please check that the details are correct. If you notice that any of them are incorrect, these will need to be corrected in the participant portal. Now, as you can see, moving downwards, you will have different sections under this subsection. So you will have the profile of your organization, and you will have further questions regarding your own organization, and equally the same will be followed for your partner organizations. Now, I want to mention that a better quality application will be specific in the section on each organization's background and experience and name the key persons who will be delivering the project and their skills. Explain how your organization's previous experience and delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in this application. Please also explain how the activities proposed in this application fit into other programs or activities you deliver. This will help the assessor understand what needs and expertise your organization has and makes it easier to see the potential impact of the project on your organization. Make sure it is clear from the description of each partner's work and expertise why they have been chosen to participate in your project, and this applies to all partners, including smaller organizations which may be involved. You can see over here for section C12 accreditation, if it actually asks if you received any type of accreditation before submitting the application. Now, this will be requested for all of the organizations. And although this section would automatically have a field open, and you should see it now over here, you can see that there's actually no accreditation reference number. And this section, although it's automatically completed by the form, it's based on the details found in the participant portal. So if you have no accreditation, this field will still be open and the form will allow validation without any data being inputted. You will not be able, however, to type in anything at this stage. As mentioned within the presentation earlier, if you are applying for a European Voluntary Service or EVS projects, you will need to have been accredited before the deadline. And if you have this accreditation, this will show up in this section, so you don't need to worry about that. As I previously mentioned, discussing about background and experience, here are the relevant sections where you will input this kind of information. And then you will have to include details of the legal representatives and contact persons for both your organization and your partner organizations one by one. I would like to emphasize on the importance that all details are accurate, and most importantly, for your own legal representative's details to be consistent throughout the application form, the declaration of honor, and all of other supporting documents, for example, the partner mandates. Another recommendation is that your organization's contact person to be different from the legal representative. This is mostly for cases in which we are trying to reach the organization and one of the persons is not available. At least we will have a backup in case we need to contact you. So as I said, you have the information for legal representative and for contact person below. You can see over here a little box in which if you tick to mention that the address is different from the one of the organization. So if you tick it, it should open a whole new section for the address. Okay. So I'm going to be moving forward. As you can see, in the section 4, contact person, there is at the bottom online linguistic support contact person. Now, this is for cases in which you are requesting online linguistic support, and here is where you should indicate an OLS contact person. It can be the same as the project contact person, and you can specify this in a separate field within the contact person subsection, which you just saw a minute ago. You can add more than one contact person for each organization via the Add button and remove them as well via the Remove button. So if you would want to add a contact person, you click on Add Contact Person and it creates a brand new contact person details. However, just to let you know, it will jump at the end of it. So you would have it over here rather than you would have it above rather than afterwards. So I'm gonna remove this one and I'll just move forward. As I mentioned earlier about validation, you will find the validate button on each page of the application, so you can check the information as you go. I will validate it just to exemplify, however, because I have not completed all of the sections of the form, it will definitely jump back to a section which is mandatory, so I will be somewhere at the beginning of the form, and then I will have to scroll back down, so just bear with me. So if we validate, as you can see, it actually comes up with an error saying which field is mandatory, and it will take me to the project title, which is on the first pages. So as you can see, the validate button works without any issues. And it basically identifies any mandatory sections that have been missed, or if I would have had any errors, it would have identified those. But it will also identify any kind of errors in the way the information is completed. Doing this will pick up your missing sections within the form and will prompt you to those specific areas so you can review them. So I'm going to quickly go back to where I was left, which is the section regarding partner contact persons. So these are the contact persons for the applicant. And then, as I said, you had the partner organizations, for which you will have exactly the same sections with the information. Let's say, for example, we input a new pick for our partner organization. And we are doing this so at a later stage we can exemplify how you will input the activities details and also how to do the budget. So as you can see, you had the same sections. Asks about accreditation, background of experience, and contact persons. And I will add another partner quickly. So you would have 3 partners. And as I mentioned, you will have to scroll back up to actually see the new fields for the new partner. For some reason, the form will do this. So another partner. And this should be the German partner. Yes, here it is. Now I want to mention about the add or remove buttons. Now you can add new partners and you can remove new partners. However, it is important to bear in mind that the remove button will only remove the last entry. So if, for example, let's say you have 5 organizations, so you are the applicant and then another 4 partners, and you realize that some details are wrong on your second organization that you entered, you will have to delete one by one all organizations starting from the 5th organization, working your way back. Therefore, I must emphasize on the importance of being very careful when completing the form. This kind of system is actually used throughout the entire form, and you will see wherever you have the remove option, it will still remove only the last part. Okay, now let's scroll down to section D, and here we are. In this section, you must provide a rationale for your project and identify both the project's objectives and the issues or needs the project will seek to address. Please outline how this need and the objectives were established, for example, through research planning meetings. Where possible, youth exchanges and EVS projects should demonstrate how young people are actively involved in shaping the project proposed. Show a clear link with the priorities and objectives of Key Action 1. And just make sure that you have a strong partnership, because this is crucial to the successful delivery of an international project. Please detail how the partnership was formed and their contribution in terms of the skills and experiences that they have and which are relevant to this project. Please outline how this project links to the needs and objectives of your partner as well. And also remember that you can choose up to 3 relevant topics, which are over here. You will have a drop down to choose from. So let's say, and you can add the remaining 2 by the plus button. However, if you try to do the 4th one, it will mention that you cannot exceed more than 3. And I wanted to let you know that if your project is to address more than 3 topics, because you cannot choose more than 3, please choose the most relevant. So I'm gonna delete these now. Okay, let's leave just 1. And we will be moving forward to section E, which is participants' profile. Okay, this section will ask you to describe who your participants are and provide details on their background and learning needs, and what are the learning outcomes of your project. As expected, this will vary depending on the activity type that you apply for. Therefore, please look at the guidance for each relevant activity. If you have any concerns, please contact us prior to the submission of your application. Now, here are some hints regarding this section. You will have to describe the participants' actual or likely age ranges, gender, ethnicity, or other pertinent information. To detail any process for selecting participants from all partner groups that has taken place or will take place, and how this selection will ensure that the most suitable participants will be looked for, and also how you will ensure a fair process. Please note that it is expected that participants normally would attend no more than 2 youth exchanges and not more than 1 long-term EVS, which is the over 2 months EVS project, to ensure opportunities are made available to as wide a group of people as possible, and to make best use of European funds. Participants must be resident in the country of their sending or receiving organization. Please describe the participants' actual or likely age ranges and gender, detailing how you will ensure a gender balance. You will have to state whether or not your project involves participants with fewer opportunities. By choosing yes, and I'm gonna go to that section in a minute. Here it is. So if you choose yes, as you can see, a new field will be open where you can state which types of situations these participants are facing. Please enter the actual or likely profile of the participants this project will involve. You will be able to add a maximum of 7, and as before, the form will mention when you try to add an 8th, for example, the form will mention that you cannot do this, that the form cannot exceed more than 7 fields in this area. And for more details on each category, please review page 11 of the program guide, and there you will see the equity and inclusion section. So very quickly, if you clicked yes, you have this new field open, and then you have a drop down with the 7 different ones. Even if you would like to include more, you don't have more options than this. So you would choose, for example, this, and you can use the plus to add and minus to delete. Okay, and moving forward, in this section you will also have to outline the competences, for example, knowledge, skills, or behaviors the participants will acquire through participation in the project. Please identify the competences that are specific to activities and methods that they will develop. There should be a clear link between the aims of your project, the activity, and the learning outcomes. They should also be relevant to your participants and address the need you identified for this project. Erasmus Plus promotes the use of European tools and certificates such as Youth Pass, which is the most commonly used European recognition tool for non-formal and informal learning in youth work, which we mentioned earlier in the presentation. You will have to state if you will use any competence validation certificates, and if so, which ones. And here you have the section regarding learning outcomes, and here you have the question if you will actually be using any certificates or instruments, and you can add, and you will mention which ones they are. You actually have a drop down for it. Okay, I will delete it now. Oh, here we have a little test. Okay, moving forward, we will end up at section F, which is preparation. Now in this section you will have actually 3 subsections, and when completing this you should keep in mind the information provided in the award criteria for this specific key action in the program guide, which you will find it on page 87. Now let us take a look on these 3 subsections separately. So you can see the first one, which is F1, practical arrangements. This is where you should describe how practical and logistical arrangements will be addressed, including travel, accommodation, insurance, safety and protection of participants, visas, social security considerations, mentoring and support, and preparatory meetings with partners, for example, to view accommodation, to finalize arrangements. In this section, you should detail how and when you plan to deliver these practical aspects and which partner or individuals will take responsibility for them. See pages 278 to 2083 my apologies, 278 and 283, in the 2017 Erasmus Plus program guide for more details. For EVS applications, you can also look at the EVS charter within our application guidance. You have to also outline which partner will be responsible for organizing different areas and how applicant will work with partners to organize practical arrangements, for example, phone, email, Skype, or preparatory visits. You have to outline the risks you identify in this project in relation to tasks, participants, and location, as well as your plans for mitigating these risks to ensure the safety of all involved. This should include agreement on emergency procedures and a code of behavior for participants. Note your plans for obtaining suitable insurance and managing any additional visa requirements and legal aspects to evidence how you will manage these. We expect that you plan to comply with UK legislation and consider relevant national legislation in the country of each of your partners. Provide detailed information about this is included in the application guide. If you have further concerns, please contact our team before you submit your applications. As a minimum, the following areas must be covered by appropriate insurance. You can find this information on page 12 of the program guide as well. This will be travel, including damage or loss of luggage, third-party liability, including where appropriate professional indemnity and insurance, and accident and serious illness or death. And also, lastly, in this subsection, which is practical arrangements, specify any particular procedures you need to follow, for example, collecting parental consent, health and safety audits, or CRB checks. Where participants have specific needs, you should address how these will be catered for. Now, the next subsection of section F will be project management. And here you should focus on describing the process you have established for agreeing roles and responsibilities with partners in order to ensure quality learning outcomes as well as good administration and delivery of the project. In describing the process for establishing suitable methods and agreeing on monitoring learning outcomes for participants. Ensure that you also detail how you intend to facilitate their active involvement and reflection to ensure the relevance and quality of these outcomes. For EVS projects, you should have an EVS volunteering agreement. This is actually mandatory. That needs to be signed by a volunteer prior to departure with the sending and the receiving organization alike. This agreement defines the task the volunteer will carry out during the EVS, the intended learning outcomes as well. As part of the grant agreement, the volunteer will receive EVS info kit, which contains information about what to expect from EVS and how to use YouthPass and receive a certificate at the end of the activity. Such an agreement remains an internal document among partners and volunteers. It will not be requested by the granting national agency. And the last section will be preparation of participants. Over here, please outline the training plan for participants and organizers, group leaders, as deemed necessary for the success of the project. This plan should detail what training will be provided, when, and by whom. It should pay attention to not only task-based training to ensure participant safety and ability to engage with activities, but provide adequate support for the intercultural and linguistic learning expected. Explain which partner will be responsible for delivering the preparatory activities and when they will take place. Include information about language and cultural preparation, practical orientation, risk prevention, and other relevant information like this. You should describe how and when the participants will be prepared and how the preparation are relevant to the experience that will be undertaken. Okay, so moving forward, we will reach section G, main activities. This is one of the most important parts of the application and is divided in 4 questions, which you can see them here. Okay. Now, in the first box, you will need to provide an outline for all activities, the context and objectives, and detail how they meet the objectives of the project as given in project description in section D. In the second box, for all activities, you should provide details such as type of activities, venues, planned dates, working methods used, countries involved, and the roles of participating organizations. Please remember that this information is also to be provided within the timetable of activities which will be annexed to the application. We will discuss about this later, to be honest. And one additional piece of information. For each youth exchange activity, the timetable that you will annex should detail the program for each day. For each European voluntary service projects, the timetable annexed will be providing a sample of 1 week's activity plan. For youth workers mobility, the timetable annex should provide a sample of either a week's activity or program overview if planning an activity of several weeks. In addition to your timetable, you should note how you have decided on the program, noting how you have ensured that your methods and activities are relevant to your objectives and are also relevant to the learning outcomes and impact you anticipate. It is extremely important to remember that all activities will need to demonstrate compliance with the principles and provisions described in the Erasmus Plus Program Guide, Annex 1, Mobility Project for Young People and Youth Workers, on pages 278 to 283. This includes the use of a variety of informal and non-formal methods to generate learning. Formal methods should be strictly limited. All activities should include space for participants to reflect on their learning, ideally using YouthPass, and should encourage active participation, creativity, and initiative. The activities that you can apply for include European Voluntary Service, Youth Exchange, or Mobility of Youth Workers. In the third box, over here, please outline the methods by which you will ensure regular communication with your partners or other project stakeholders. Describe how you plan to work together. And as we mentioned before, good partnership is crucial, so you should present a clear set of roles and responsibilities for all involved in the activity delivery, project management, and administration. Please outline any scheduled meetings or other methods by which you will maintain contact before, during, and after the activity. Now, in the last box, you will have to explain the need for accompanying persons if applicable. Within section G, main activities, you will have subsection G1, which you will be seeing any minute now. Here it is. So you can see over here subsection G1, which is activity details. Please be careful when completing this section, as this section will feed into the budget section. It is very important to keep in mind that the data here will need to correspond to the data in the budget section, otherwise you will not be able to validate your eForm. The different types of activities that you can choose are a youth exchange, a European voluntary service, or youth worker mobility. Please remember that for the project that involves partner countries, at least one participating organization must be from a program country. Every activity you plan to do must be listed in this section. We cannot fund any activities if they are not listed in the application form. Some changes may be requested and approved by us at a later date. However, if an activity is not added on here, we will not be able to fund it, and we will not be able to increase funding to cover them anyways. For each activity, complete the fields in the grid as it follows. So you have the activity number, which is actually populated automatically, as you can see. So we have activity A1. Activity type, you will select from the drop-down menu, and I will select Youth Exchanges, Program Countries. There we go. Now you have flow number, which is automatically inputted, and this is the term used to describe a separate instance of travel within one activity. Then you have group. This is a column used to differentiate organizations that might be taking part from the same country. It is therefore advisable to use the name of the organizations, and I will pick our organization and I will type in my organization, as that is the name of our organization for the purpose of this test. Now you have country of origin, where you can select from the drop-down menu, and you will see all of the countries, not only the countries that are part of your participating countries or yourself. And in this case, we will choose United Kingdom. Over here. When you have the country of destination, this field, along with the country of origin, is used to calculate the rate per person per day for the proposed flow, known as individual support. So we will be choosing on this occasion to travel to Spain, and we've picked it from the drop-down. With the venue city, which is the next column, you simply have to type in the city where you will be going. So we will be going to Madrid on this instance. And now you have the distance band. Well, for this column, you will have to use the distance calculator supported by the European Commission. And the amount of grant provided is for a return journey included. I will show you now how to use the distance calculator. My apologies. My voice is fading away. So just bear with me whilst I switch on the distance calculator for you. Okay, so I have it open already over here. So here you have the distance calculator. The distance is from cities and towns, so you have to choose the nearest one to your head office and the head office of your partners. The band that comes up in the band, which is the one that you will need to input in the application. So in here we will put from Birmingham. So we choose Birmingham, England, UK, to Madrid. And then you just click on the calculate button, and it will automatically calculate, and it falls in the distance. The distance calculated is 1,348 kilometers. So you keep this in mind. You go back to your form, which I will be doing now. And in your form, you will input the distance band from a drop-down menu as being between, it falls in the distance band bracket of 500 to 1,999 kilometers. Now you can carry on to the start date, and we will choose either, again, you can either choose from the actual calendar or you can input it. So I'm going to use from the calendar on this occasion. My apologies. So we will choose 20th of July 2017. So 20th of July 2017, and over here I'm gonna type in the date, which will be 30th of July 2017. And then you will have the total duration being automatically calculated by the form. And as you can see, we have decided that the activity we register just now will last from 20th to the 30th of July 2017, which means that we have a total of 11 days. And as it mentioned on the actual form, this is excluding travel. The rate will be calculated per participant per day. And please note the following. You have the minimum and maximum durations. So as a reminder, you have the youth exchange. For youth exchange activities, you have from 5 to 21 days, excluding travel time. For European voluntary service, you have either 2 to 12 months or 2 weeks to 2 months for group service or EVS involving young people with fewer opportunities, again, excluding travel days. And mobility of youth workers, it's 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time. Now you have over here the next column, which is travel days. You enter the number of travel days, and we will enter 2. After typing in the number of travel days, the form will automatically calculate the total days including travel, which you will see in our case will be 13, and it showed up automatically. The next column is number of participants, and over here you will have to enter the total participants in this flow. This will be including all young people and group leaders. So we will put 15. This will be multiplied by the daily rate to give to the travel budget, which you will see in the budget section. So carrying on, as I said, we have 15 participants. And in the next columns after this one, you will have to provide a breakdown of the participants. So you will have to specify how many participants with special needs. And here you can, you have to enter the total number of participants who will require additional support to aid their participation in the activity. Let's say 2. Then you have participants with fewer opportunities, where you will have to enter the total number of participants who have fewer opportunities. Let's say for our example 5. And then you have accompanying persons, where you will have to enter the total number of group leaders or any specialist staff who are required to support the participation of the young people with special needs. So although we mentioned group leaders, this is people that are specifically there to help the young people with special needs. So we have 2 participants with special needs, and let's assume that one person will be an accompanying person to help both of them. And the last column is group leaders or trainers, where you will have to enter the number of group leaders or facilitators that will join the activity. So let's say 2. So here you have it. This is how you complete this section. Now underneath over here you have a plus button and a minus button, which are used to add new flows to the same activity. So here you added a new one or a third one, or how many other you need. And then you use the minus button to delete them. And then below you have add activity or remove activity buttons that will allow you to add or remove new activities. As before, and I will mention this again, please remember that the remove buttons or the minus button will only delete the last instance. So be careful when completing this. So if you would add a new activity, again, you will have to go back up for a bit, and you can see over here on the right hand side, A2 has been created. And now I will remove this activity. Okay, so now that we have seen how to do this section, I would like to also mention that you may find that these activities will change as the project goes on, particularly for those planned for a while off. That's not a problem, but again, we cannot revise grant awards upwards. So if each mobility were to last twice as long as planned, the grant could not accommodate that. Now we can move forward, and we have section H, which is follow up. Let me just center this. Okay, in this section, you are required to describe what will happen as a result of your activities. There are 3 subsections, which is H1 impact, which you can see now, H2 dissemination of project results, and lastly H3 evaluation. So in this section, please focus on listing the expected outcomes for participants resulting from their planned learning and active involvement and participation in the project, such as knowledge, skills, and changes in attitude or behavior. In addition, you may plan these outcomes may have a further impact on their employment status, ability to access further education, well-being, or lifestyle. Please note the most relevant and realistic outcomes. For participating organizations, please detail how this activity might generate organizational learning or specific skills for their staff. Describe the influence this project may have on their future work. Results or not impact, please mind that. And think about how you will monitor or evaluate and record these kind of impacts. Consider if this project will develop the participating organizations or participants' understanding of an issue, youth work, or train them in a new methodology that they can implement in their local communities, for example. Will this raise the profile of an issue or an organization locally, nationally, or internationally? Highlight here any activity that you plan to involve a wider community in your project so that they can benefit too. Community involvement and benefit is an expectation of EVS projects in particular and can bring added value to all projects. Given that dissemination should be considered throughout the project, You should ensure that dissemination activities are focused, relevant, and well described, and the target audiences are clearly defined. Dissemination activity may be in the form of local meetings, workshops, or discussions with members of a wider community, and you may use handouts, reports, evaluations, or videos to assist this. You might plan to get press coverage or invite local counselors or decision makers to dissemination events. The Erasmus Plus marketing team is always keen to hear about interesting case studies. You will also have an Erasmus Plus dissemination platform, for which you can find the link on our website, where you will be able to further share your project outcomes. Now, a few more points until we move to the next section is to please remember that is an important part of a staff mobility project for each individual to cascade information across the formal and informal networks upon their return, and that dissemination takes place across all the partner organizations. You should describe dissemination strategy at the local, regional, and if appropriate, national level. You are expected to include a final evaluation of the project in which you will be able to assess whether or to what extent the project has been a success. This evaluation should highlight the learning outcomes of all involved. We encourage evaluation before and during the activity as well as the final evaluation. This helps with establishing baselines and therefore seeing what has actually improved, as well as fine-tuning the project as it goes on. Consider how to involve your receiving partners, placement providers, and participants in the evaluation of your project and its outcomes. How you will evaluate the activities undertaken by the participants during the project and participant satisfaction with the placement, as well as how you will evaluate the management process used, the longer-term evaluation of the project, and how you will use findings to improve further projects. So please be as detailed as possible in this section, as it is really important to know what your project has done and how it impacted both participants, organizations, and the wider community. Now we can move forward to the next section, which is section I, budget. And this is again the next very important section. This will be an introduction to the various components of the budget for Key Action 1 youth projects, and more detailed information is available in part B of the program guide. Please find this additional information on how to complete this section within the guide for applicants for Key Action 1 youth. It is important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organization will receive the grant and will be responsible for making the distribution amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. There are two funding mechanisms under Key Action 1 Youth Mobility, and these are unit costs or actual costs. The unit costs are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. For some unit costs, you will actually spend more, and for some perhaps less than the unit cost. Unit costs are used to help make the funding simpler to understand and manage. On the other hand, the actual costs, which we mentioned earlier, means that you will receive funding for how much you actually plan to spend. Actual costs are used for the budget headings, exceptional costs, and special needs support, and can be fully or partially reimbursed. The Erasmus Plus grant is regarded as a contribution to your project costs and may not cover the total cost of your project. The budget categories for a Key Action 1 youth project are travel, including top-up for expensive domestic travel costs, organizational support, special needs support, exceptional costs, individual support, and linguistic support only for EVS. The last two, individual support and linguistic support, is only for EVS projects. Applicants must calculate a project's provisional budget at the application stage according to the rates outlined below. Please note, if you miscalculate your budget and request less than you are entitled to, you will only receive up to the amount requested. You must ensure that the budget provided is consistent with the activity described in your application form. Please note that the UK National Agency cannot award any funding over the amount requested, so please ensure that you check your budget thoroughly before submitting the eForm. When completing the budget section on the eForm, it is important to note that automatic calculations will only take place when you press the Validate button on the relevant page on the eForm. You will need to be connected to the internet for the page to update, and you will need to press the validate button on each of the budget pages as you progress through the eForm. Unfortunately, because I have not included all of the information in the eForm, when I will validate, if I validate this form, it will not calculate automatically. It will just simply take me to the mandatory fields as it happened before. But when you will actually do the eForms yourselves, because you have probably entered all of the information and hopefully you don't have any errors, once you will actually click the validate button, the budget section will be very nicely updated, and it will be in line with what you have included in the previous sections. So now let's take a look at the subsections of this budget section. And as you can see, you have subsection I1 travel. Please plan activities early, only if you have some cash flow to cover for that to cover for any costs, just in case the contracting period takes a bit longer than expected. A side note, we are aware that you have a potential earliest start date for any projects. However, we do advise that you give a bit of time. So, for example, the 1st of May will be the first possible start date for your projects. We do advise that you have your start date a bit later, just in case the contracting period takes a bit longer and you have a leeway. So carrying on, this element of the grant is a contribution to the cost of each participant's return journey from their place of origin to the location of their mobility activity. Travel is calculated on a unit cost basis based on the travel distance per participant, and as exemplified earlier, the travel distances must be calculated using the distance calculator supported by the European Commission. All fields in this section will be pre-filled based on the information provided in activities details. If there are any errors here, you will need to go back to section G1 to amend, as no changes can be made to this information in this section of the form. Should you be aware of any potential expensive domestic travel costs, you will have to input this within the column top up for expensive domestic travel costs within this subsection. So as you can see in the budget section, you have 15 participants that we included earlier, and you can see how much is the travel grant per participant based on the distance band. And here in the top up for expensive domestic travel, you could simply type in, I don't know, for example, 50 euros, let's say. Okay. Now, moving forward, you have the subsection I2, individual support. As I mentioned, this is applicable to EVS projects only. This individual support is calculated on a unit cost basis according to the country of destination and the duration of the activity. It is intended as pocket money and not expected to cover food or accommodation costs. A unit cost allowance will be payable according to the country of destination and the duration of the placement. Please note that different subsistence rates apply for learner and staff mobilities. This table is pre-filled from the above section activities details G.1, and subsistence rates are calculated within the form based on the destination and duration detailed above. Now, because we have chosen in our test youth exchange project, unfortunately we do not have any kind of detail on I.2. However, when you will actually include any information on an EVS project, this will be pre-filled and you should be able to see all of the different columns. Moving down to section I.3, organizational support, where you can see we have the information. This is a calculation on a unit cost basis and is a contribution to cost directly linked to the implementation of mobility activities, excluding subsistence for participants, including preparation such as pedagogical, linguistic, or intercultural, monitoring and support of participants during mobility, and validation of learning outcomes. Okay. There is a subsection which will appear again only for EVS activities, and that would be linguistic support. Here is the section where the linguistic support would show up, and it will actually jump and be named I4. So basically we'll have an additional subsection of the budget if you have EVS and you requested for linguistic support. As mentioned earlier, this only applies to long-term EVS, so therefore with a duration of 2 to 12 months, and is compulsory for all participants to take part in. Specifically, if you have group 1 languages, which you can find this information in our guide for applicants, as the languages that are available under online linguistic support, you will find this information in our guide for applicants. I4, special needs support. The special needs support is only applicable if you plan to involve participants with special needs or a disability which will result in additional cost. This component of the grant is based on an estimate of the likely actual cost relating specifically to the needs of participants with disabilities. You must ensure that you provide a clear and detailed justification for the amount requested within the application form, as the reasonableness of the amount requested will be assessed as part of the overall assessment of the application. If the request is not considered reasonable, it may be reduced on assessment. Please note that whilst there is no limit to the amount you can request, the balance will be payable on actual cost evidenced at the final report stage. Okay. And the last subsection is I.5, which is exceptional costs. These are calculated on an actual cost basis. And here, please detail how many participants and the breakdown of costs in the narrative to support this. The funding rules state that these costs, which are based on actuals, are specifically to support the following: visa and visa-related costs for all activity types, costs for providing a financial guarantee, which will be up to 75% of the eligible costs for all activity types, expensive travel costs of participants from outermost regions and overseas countries and territories for all activity types, participation of young people with fewer opportunities for youth exchange only, costs in support of reinforced mentorship and specific preparation in the case of participation of young people with fewer opportunities for EVS projects only, costs to support the selection and participation of young people affected by situations such as homelessness, mental health, substance dependency, and or those with criminal backgrounds for EVS projects only, and costs for accommodation for advanced planning visits for youth exchanges and EVS projects. Here you have it. This actually concludes the budget section. But I would like to mention that at the end of this section, you will have a box titled, "Please provide any further comments you may have concerning the above entered budget," and you can see it over here on the screen. I would like to emphasize on the possibility of using this box to write any details or justifications you might want to provide in order to explain why certain costs are required in case you didn't have the specific space required in the previous subsections. Now we can move forward to section J, which is project summary. In this section, please provide a well-written, comprehensive summary of the project within the application. Project summaries must be written in plain, clear English and free from jargon. It is important to be concise and clear and mention at least the following elements: context or background of project, objectives of the project, number and profile of participants, description of activities, methodology to be used in carrying out the project, and a short description of the results and impact envisaged and the potential longer-term benefits. Please note that this summary may be used by the EC or the NA, which is the European Commission or the national agency, in their publications and will also be fed into the Erasmus Plus dissemination platform. So it should be written with this in mind. If you actually scroll down further on the eForm, you will see the subsections, which are summary of participating organizations and summary of activities and participants. These two subsections are pre-populated tables based on the information taken from earlier sections of the application, and you can see you have the 3 participating organizations with their country of organization, and the type of organizations, and then you have a very short summary, in our case, of the summary of activities and participants. We have a very short project over here. And moving forward, you have J2 budget summary, which is a table providing an overview of the activity number, activity type, and grant requested for the project. An additional table is then populated below for costs relating to organizational support, if it's applicable. And then you have the project total grant, pre-populated table containing the total combined grant requested for the project. It is imperative that you check this amount and make sure that it's correct against your own calculation and resolve any issues before submitting your application. And then you move forward to your checklist. Okay, just to center it back. This is a section that provides a quick review checklist so that you can check off that you completed the submission activities. Please make sure that you fulfill all of the requirements. Additionally, what I would like to mention is if you can please take a look on our guide for applicants, where we have included an application checklist on page 51, and this was created just to aid you in the preparation and submission of your application. And moving forward, you go to section L, which is data protection service. This will provide you with information on data protection, and applicants are actually required to read the data protection notice in advance of signing the declaration of honor. And then you move forward to section M, which is the declaration of honor. You will have one page of information that we urge you to read, and then you will have the actual page with the declaration of honor. I'm gonna shrink it a bit so you can see the page. You can see that you have on the right hand side a print declaration of honor. I cannot emphasize on the importance of needing to print this document, sign it, have it signed by your legal representative, then scan it and attach it as an annex to your online application. Please ensure you complete it in full, which means no section should be left blank. And also please keep in mind that this document needs to be signed in original, as we do not accept any electronic signatures or inserts or photos of scans or of signatures. Please ensure that you print out the declaration of honor, sign it in original before you scan it, and then save it back to annex it to your application. Once you have done this, you can move forward to section N, which is dedicated to the annexes. You can provide up to 10 annexes relevant to your application in support of your application. The following documents need to be annexed to the application form. This is the declaration of honor, as I mentioned earlier, printed, signed by the legal representative in original, scanned, and then attached. The mandates of each partner to the applicant, signed by both parties. The youth activity timetable template for your applications. There will be a direct link to this template in our guidance. And just to mention, applicants need to ensure that all documents specified in the checklist, see section K, or the application submission checklist that we have in our guide for applicants, they are submitted electronically with the application. To attach documents, you click on the Add button, which you can see over here on the right hand side. And this will then open an additional window which will allow applicants to browse files on your computer and upload. Please note that only PDF, doc, docx, XLS, JPEG, or text odd or odds files can be submitted electronically with an application. No other files will be accepted. A file which has been added in error can be removed by clicking the Remove button, which replaces the Add button on the right side of the table once you actually added an annex. You may find some limits to the total number of documents you can upload, and in this instance, please scan all similar documents in one attachment to avoid this issue. For example, if you have let's say 8 mandates, rather than attaching them individually, we advise that you scan all of them in one folder and have them all together. Quickly moving forward, we have section O, which is submission. And once this needs to be mentioned that once you have completed the form, you will need to check the following. So check that all the criteria listed in the submission checklist are complete, aka part K. Read the data protection notice, part L. Ensure that the declaration of honor has been read, completed in full, printed, signed in original, as per the instructions for part M. And then just ensure that the signed declaration of honor has been scanned and attached as an annex prior to submission. Subsection 01, which is the data validation. In here you just have to ensure that they have validated all of the sections of the application before submitting. You need to be online to do this. As we mentioned before, you can validate after each page, so after each piece of information that you actually included. In order for you to check that is correct, you can validate throughout, or as you can see, you have over here final validate button. However, we do advise not to leave it on this up to this point for validation. Subsection 02, standard submission procedure. Over here, we would like to encourage you to submit as early as possible. But a few final words on the process of submitting your application. As we mentioned before, validate as you go and after completing the application as well. You will be taken to any section that are incorrect or have been missed if this is the case. These will need to be resolved before you can submit the actual form. Ensure you're connected to the internet when you submit. Save the final completed version of your application form to your PC in case any submission issues. You should only submit an application form once you are happy with the finalized version. Also, ensure that all sections of the form are valid and all annexes are attached before submitting the form. Please note that the deadline mentioned in the form is Brussels time, and you have to submit online by 11 a.m. on this occasion for the first deadline of the 2017 call on the 2nd of February 2017. We would advise you to leave plenty of time in completing your application and then submitting it online before the deadline in case of any unexpected technical difficulties. When you are ready, press the submit button online, which you can see it over here. If the submission is successful, the submission summary should update with the submission ID. We advise you to save a final copy to evidence successful submission in case of any queries. So, talking about technical difficulties, because this happens all the time. If there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted, the form will say error under status. I will discuss about this in a minute. However, I would also like to mention that technical issues is not only what the actual form might present. As I said, they happen all the time from the perspective of your computer might be crashing or any kind of situation that is incompatibility with the system that you're using. So please make sure that you give enough time to prepare for this, as sometimes it can be really hard, and if you leave them until the last minute, it's really hard for you to solve these issues. However, we will be able to help if any situations arise. So regarding the potential errors that can come up in the actual eForm, if this happens and you're unable to submit the form, you should follow the alternative submission procedure outlined in the guide for applicants. However, this is only based on proper technical errors, and be aware that we will only accept this type of submission if the error message is recorded under status in the submission summary section of the eForm with a timestamp prior to or on the deadline date and time. There are some error messages that are not accepted as technical issues, so if you follow the alternative submission procedure for these errors, your application will be deemed ineligible. So what are these errors? And don't worry if you cannot note them all down, they are all detailed on your guide for applicants. So you have error 01, which is ERR01. It relates to invalid data or missing fields in the eForm. This is not considered to be a technical issue. and can be corrected by completing the application form correctly and validating again. Error 06 or ERR06 means that there are errors within the annexes. For example, the total size of the attachments exceeds 5 megabytes, or they are not in the accepted file formats. This can be rectified either by reducing the size of the attachments, as I mentioned before, grouping together the same type of annexes, or by removing them and reattaching in the correct format. Unknown. This means that the eForm was not submitted and no submission attempts were made. If you have error called local01, it means that Adobe Reader Security enabled appears. In order to submit the eForm, you must click the appropriate options in the yellow security warning bar at the top of the form. Local2 or local02, network connection error appears. You need to check your internet connection and try to submit the form again and try a different network. So the subsection number 3, as I mentioned about the alternative submission procedure, it is important to know that this is only applicable if applicants are unable to submit their application online due to a technical error. It is unlikely. In this unlikely event, please refer to the application guidance, which explains the alternative submission procedure. It is very important to note that applicants cannot make any changes to their grant applications after the submission deadline. So here it is. Here is the form. We have gone through the entire form together. I hope this was helpful, and I will now move on to some last few bits on the actual presentation. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we are back on our presentation. So you must ensure that you have validated all of the sections of the application form before submitting. You should also ensure that all annexes are attached before attempting any submissions. And just to reiterate, that the most important annexes, which are in fact mandatory, are Declaration of Honor, which needs to be printed, completed in full, and signed in original by the project's legal representative stated within the application. As you have seen during the application eForm presentation, this is found at the end of the actual eForm. This is the most important annex, as without this, we are not able to forward the application to assessment. The second annex is the activities timetable, in which you will provide a time frame and description of the planned activities, and the partner mandates, which need to be done for each partner. I want quickly to jump on the website to show you again where to find these additional documents, the timetable, and also the partner mandate. So as I said, you go through menu, apply for funding, youth funding, apply for youth mobility funding, and on the right hand side under key documents you will find the partner mandates, and also you can see underneath the youth mobility project timetable spreadsheet, which I did not mention the first time that I showed you this. So this is where you will be able to find the two documents. Okay, going back. Okay, so as I mentioned, the last two annexes can be found on our website. We recommend that where possible you scan different documents together into a single file. As I mentioned, for example, the partner mandates to be scanned together rather than individually. You will need to check that the annexes are within the maximum 5 megabyte size and in the file formats accepted by the eForm, which are listed in our guide for applicants as well. If you still experience problems with attaching annexes after having checked these aspects, you can email them to erasmusplus@equaris.com, which you can see on the screen, before the deadline of 11 a.m. 2nd of February 2017, clearly stating which application form they relate to by providing the application hash code. and also tell us your organization's details and project name. However, please do this only as an exception and only when you ensure that you have checked all of the information that we mentioned before and that you also followed all the available guidance first. You will need to ensure that you are connected to the internet in order to submit your application. If you experience technical problems which you are unable to resolve, you need to follow the alternative submission procedure which we have just talked about, but please be mindful of the errors which we cannot accept. We have created an application checklist which is included in your Key Action 1 Youth Guide for applicants, as we mentioned earlier, and these will be really helpful in checking if all required steps have been done in preparing and submitting your applications. Once we have received your application, the national agency will do some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will be deemed ineligible and will not go forward to assessment if it does not meet any of the eligibility criteria specified in the Program Guide for Key Action 1 Youth Mobility Projects. You will find these on pages 80 to 82 of the 2017 Program Guide. On the slide, there are some examples, but please remember that this is not a full list. So, your application won't be eligible if your planned activities are not eligible under Key Action 1 Youth. Your application won't go through to qualitative assessment if your organization as applicant has no legal personality in the UK. Next to your application, there are a number of documents that need to be annexed, and these should not be missed. And lastly and most important is to remember that your application won't be considered eligible if you submit after 11 a.m. on the 2nd of February 2017 for this first round. And now to move forward, we would like to mention about the award criteria. So once your application has been deemed as eligible, the national agency will arrange for it to be assessed by external experts from a qualitative point of view against the award criteria published on page 83 of the program guide, which is the one specifically for Key Action 1 youth projects. On the slide, you can see the 3 award criteria, which shows that an application can score a maximum of 100 points. As a rule, in order for an application to be eligible to be awarded funding, it must score a minimum of 60 points, but also at least half of the maximum points in each award criteria. When reading the award criteria information within the program guide, you will notice that each criterion has sub-points which need to be taken in consideration when preparing your application. I would like to point out that as part of the assessment process, the national agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the program guide. As a result, if there are any budget requests that do not follow these rules, your request budget may be reduced. During the qualitative assessment process, applications will also be assessed against other relevant areas. Applicants will need to comply with the exclusion criteria, which can be found in the 2017 program guide. These are situations such as being bankrupt or participating in criminal activities. An applicant will be excluded from participating in call for proposals or will be rejected from the award procedure if it is found in one of the situations described in the criteria. The selection criteria, these are operational capacity and financial capacity. In terms of operational capacity, applicants need to demonstrate they have the capacity to successfully deliver Erasmus Plus projects and administer them in accordance with the grant agreement and the 2017 program guide. The assessment of organizational capacity will consider elements like the roles of staff involved in delivering the planned projects and the past history of the applicant in delivering EU-funded projects. An outcome of this analysis may be that the UK National Agency may limit the number of live projects an organization manages at any time if it does not evidence sufficient organizational capacity to successfully deliver them. In terms of financial capacity, as you know, Erasmus Plus projects are co-funded, and Erasmus Plus grants may not cover all costs. Projects must be delivered and reported using only a pre-financing payment or an advance. Therefore, applicants must have stable and sufficient sources of funding to complete the project. Note, however, that the national agency doesn't complete a financial capacity check on public bodies and international organizations or where the grant requested doesn't exceed €60,000. Finally, when planning your project, remember that each project financed by the EU is entitled to receive only one grant from the EU budget to any one beneficiary. In case where organizations are also receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar activities, it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure they remain compliant with the relevant funding rules, including those in relation to double funding, which are detailed in Part C of the program guide. The Erasmus Plus National Agency will be validating your organization and also your partner organizations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organization has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome for your application. During the validation process, the national agency will check whether all the information you have put into the participant portal is complete and correct. We will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as the supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the program guide, including information on the exclusion criteria. Your partners will also need to be validated by their own national agencies. Please note that organizations that are not valid cannot take part in E+ funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, there may be significant delays to the processing of your application, and the NA may even have to withdraw its offer of funding if your application is successful. Now to take a look at the budget rules. As you can see on the slide, there is no maximum budget that can be requested, but this will have to be a realistic request based on the planned activities and, of course, your organizational capacity. Some key points to remember about the budget. There are unit cost contribution and actual cost contributions, as we mentioned when we were describing the eForm. With unit costs, the funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance traveled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs or travel and top-up for expensive domestic travel, organizational support, individual support, and linguistic support where eligible and only for EVS projects. Funding for actual costs is obviously based on the real cost of the item or service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support and exceptional costs. Special needs support will cover up to 100% of the cost. Under exceptional costs, however, only a percentage of the actual cost will be funded via the Erasmus Plus budget. Please find more information on pages 89 to 99 of the program guide, where you will find all of the rules regarding the budget request that you can have under Key Action 1 youth projects. It is important to note that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly explained in the application form, as the assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and can recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. So, before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the Commission's documents. First of all, the 2017 Program Guide and the National Agency's Guide for Applicants and other guidance documents as available on our website, which I showed you where to get them from. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement, which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Save the form frequently so no information is lost. Ensure current options are selected on the application so that important sections aren't deleted. As we've said, whilst looking through the application form, double check that the budget you request is accurate and very well justified. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit on many of the sections. Something that I didn't mention before, the limit of the sections are mostly 5,000 words. But remember that these 5,000 words character limit, it's actually including the spaces. And you can see the limit by hovering your mouse over the answer boxes. Get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline. which I repeat is 2nd of February 2017 for round 1, and it needs to be done before 11 a.m. UK time. Your next steps. To conclude, I would like to remind you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the first deadline of the 2017 call year, 2nd of February, for applicants to be submitted under Key Action 1 Youth. We will be holding a live interaction Q&A session webinar on the 18th of January to answer questions on Key Action 1 Youth Mobility. There will be some key topics open for discussion, and participants will be able to ask relevant questions. To register, please visit our Events and Webinars webpage under Events. Places are limited to 30 people per person on a first-come, first-served basis. You have a detailed guide for applicants on how to fill out and submit the application form. Please make sure you check the correct one, as these guides are tailored to each key action type we manage. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all of the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus program. Our website holds other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. And if you have any questions or find yourself in need of a guidance, you can always contact the Erasmus Plus helpline. So, speaking about the Erasmus Plus helpline, you will find on the slide the information, and please contact us or our team, which is available every day from Monday to Friday, to answer any queries you may have via the erasmusplus@ecoris.com inbox or our helpline, which you can see the phone number on the slide. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. And lastly, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I apologize if in certain places I skipped a beat, but we hope you found this session useful today, and we wish you the best of luck with your future applications, and we are very keen on seeing your new applications and ideas. Thank you very much, and best of luck.